So, a basic introduction to isometric sketching. What is isometric sketching? Isometric sketching, it makes a lot more sense as you do it, but it's basically building shapes in proportion at a certain angle on the page. Okay, and all the lines, if they're not at an angle, will be parallel. Okay, so what I mean by all the lines is if you imagine a cube, all the lines will be parallel on that cube, and I'll show you what I mean by that in a second. You're also going to have some axes, so again, I'll draw this in a moment, but the key angle that we need to be thinking about is 120 degrees, which, as I draw this over here, I've got 30 degrees either side, and then this is 120 degrees here. So our isometric cube is basically starting with this arrow. And what I mean by that is I'm going to have a vertical line. I'm going to move the paper around rather than trying to do it freehand. That is the start of my isometric cube. So I'm going to continue drawing out in this direction. And these two lines are parallel. Okay, I'm also going to draw a vertical line here, randomly positioned. Doesn't have to be at the end of the lines. And those two lines are parallel. I'm going to draw a vertical line over this side, and those three lines are parallel. And now I'm going to draw a line that's parallel to this line, just like so. And what you might have seen me do there is I kind of move my pencil along it to try and work out where that line needs to go. I'm also going to have some lines at the back here. Now, this is why I like the two pencils. We can see those two lines are pretty good in terms of being parallel. I want this line to also be parallel at the back. So I can kind of visualize where that needs to be from this corner. See this line here. That is relatively good. Same for these ones. Okay, now this line is actually slightly off. So I'm going to go off this one here. Something like so. We want to be going back in this direction. And there are my parallel lines. I have a nice isometric cube. And in terms of having a dotted line at the bottom, this angle here, roughly 30 degrees. That angle there is roughly 30 degrees as well, which gives us our 120 here. So there is a very, very basic isometric cube. Now, just to highlight those a little bit better, you can see that the vertical lines, we have three orange vertical lines that go directly up. We have three green lines that go off to the right that are parallel to each other. And then we have three blue lines that go off to the left that are parallel to each other. Now, this is the key concept to understand in isometric sketching. If we can have these green lines always parallel going in that direction, and these blue lines always parallel going off to the left, you're in business, you're in a really good place. So a few other things, let's just go and repeat this, but we're going to change the shape into a bit of a cuboid. So I've started with my vertical line. That angle, hopefully you've noticed, is way too sharp. So I can rub that out like so, and we can start again. There's nothing wrong if we make mistakes of rubbing things out. We want it to be a little bit shallower. Okay, so that kind of 30 degree in that direction, and that 30 degrees in that direction. And there's my arrow to start with. So everything's going to be parallel off these. So that one is going to be parallel to there. It's not bad. We're going to make this quite long going in this direction. And we can shorten this in this direction just by cutting it off a little bit. Okay, and we've got our verticals, one vertical there, one vertical there. And my vertical on this side is going to be a bit further away, a little bit longer. So those are my three orange lines here. I'm going to do exactly the same going back, but we need to make sure that my green lines are parallel here. So this is all parallel. And then finally, my blue line going back to the left. Okay, so these ones, that's not great actually, there and there, going off in that direction like so. So hopefully you're pretty happy with how that is working. I'll just highlight over it to make sure we're all happy. There's my orange, three vertical lines. Here's my green, three lines in that direction. And hopefully my blue lines in this direction are all the same as well. And as you can see, mine aren't perfect. Look, I've rushed it a little bit, but you get the idea. To draw well in isometric, this is the key concept to understand. Some common mistakes, I'll quickly just draw some isometric common mistakes. You can see here, this angle is really, really sharp, too much. Some people don't do it enough, some people do this. Now that's known as oblique. Again, that's not isometric here because there's no angle here. Some people are great with their angle. They get a really nice 30 degree angle. get the verticals looking fantastic. This is really good over here. And then they get confused. Where do I go? And they do this. Doesn't look right. Okay, you need to make sure that you're really careful to make sure these lines at the back are parallel to each other as well. That's probably the hardest and most common thing that we see. So there is the basics of isometric. Hopefully that's pretty easy to understand and you can put it into practice. The more you practice getting these isometric cubes and cuboids accurate, the easier the rest of the sketching becomes when you start doing more complex shapes. So practice this a lot, be confident, and you'll be in a really good place.